Hi, everyone, and welcome to our May virtual meetup on burnout prevention for healthcare providers. I'm Jen Drummond, and I'm the CEO and founder of Hummingbird Clinical Consulting and a proud Jane ambassador, and I will be your host for today's important session. These monthly meetups are designed with you in mind, healthcare professionals and teams who are doing meaningful work and looking for real world tools to stay grounded, supported, and inspired. Burnout is more than a buzzword. It's something many of us have felt personally or seen in our colleagues, whether it be physical exhaustion, emotional fatigue, or disconnection from our purpose, but it doesn't have to be inevitable. Today, we're diving deep into practical strategies to prevent burnout, care for our nervous system, and build practices and careers that are actually sustainable. Before we get started, a quick few housekeeping notes. Please stay muted during the presentation to keep background noise to a minimum. This session is being recorded, so you will get a link to the replay and a follow-up resource after today's session. And feel free to use the chat throughout, as well as when we have our Q&A at the end of our presentation, so that we can chat with the group and share insights. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce our incredible guest speakers. These are leaders who bring both clinical experience and business acumen to the burnout conversation. We have Gabrielle Giuliano Villani, a licensed clinical social worker and business coach. Emma Jack is a physiotherapist and mindset coach, and Ildi Arlette is the CEO of Results Continuum. We are so honored to have them with us today. So let's start some quick introductions, and I will have Gabrielle take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I am the one with all the background noise because I'm sitting outside and there's lots of birds chirping. But I'm Gabrielle. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I am a previous group practice owner. I had a group practice that specialized in working with the Medicare and Medicaid population. And I scaled it to 15 providers, multiple seven figures, and got super burnt out and sold it. And now I help other practice owners scale sustainably, add other income streams, and I also lead retreats. The next one is here in Costa Rica, where I'm at right now. And I'm also an expert in polyvagal theory. So you can go to the next slide, because that will kick us off. So as a social worker, we talk about burnout and secondary trauma a lot. However, the narrative has changed a little bit in the past couple of years. But when I was in school and I was working in child protective services, which was like the most stressful job ever, nobody really ever explained to me like the how or the why burnout happened. So I knew that I was burnt out, that I was irritable and angry, and that I was really unhappy. But I needed to go a little bit deeper. And of course, at the time when I was working in CPS, they gave us lots of very unhelpful ideas, like have some lavender essential oils on your desk and get a massage, which I couldn't afford because I was making $35,000 a year. And when you come out from the massage, the emails and all the BS is still there. And so that's kind of where the shift for me happened when I started learning about polyvagal theory and nervous system regulation, actually through my EMDR training when I took the basic one for that. So to me, this is the most important way to think about burnout because it's the foundation for everything. Every single one of us has a nervous system. Yours is responding to my voice right now, maybe to my background. If you see some like nice, pretty green things, the birds, that may trigger you or not, I don't know. But your nervous system is taking in everything from your environment and having a response to that, whether it's something that you want or something that you don't want. So I see this not as a weakness if you are feeling burnt out or overextended or just exhausted. It's not a failure. It's your nervous system letting you know that something needs to change. So that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It's really just a physiological response to chronic stress. And you can go to the next one, please. All right, so I only have a few minutes to talk about all of this, so I'm putting literally years of training into like 4 minutes. So I'm gonna do my best. But essentially, we have 3 stages of our nervous system, and you're all probably very familiar or have heard about your vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in your body, and it is responsible for most of these emotional responses. It takes in 80%, and then the 20% your brain responds to. So if anybody here knows about somatic work, or if there's any therapists here and we talk about bottom-up approaches instead of top-down approaches, this is why. Because your body is taking in all of this information and then having a response to it. So we have 3 stages in our nervous system. We have our baseline, which is called ventral vagal. And then we have fight or flight, which you're also probably familiar with. And then we have freeze. So I'm actually gonna have you go to the next slide. Perfect, okay. So this is the easiest way to explain it. So this is a chart of what happens in our nervous system. So we all kind of start in the green, which is our baseline, or is also called ventral vagal. This is where you are present, grounded, in the moment, things are good, right? And not just feeling that way, but physically there are things happening in your body as well. Your digestion is doing well, your immune response is good, your defense responses are down, you're able to make eye contact if that's something that feels comfortable for you. And your ability to relate to connect is online as well. Because when you're in the green, ventral vagal, your prefrontal cortex is also online, which is where you make rational decisions. But what happens in life is stress, trauma, you hear something you don't like, whatever it is, you have another client with a new diagnosis, you're overextended, whatever. You kind of move up the roller coaster, I like to call it, and you switch into your sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. I think most people know what this feels like. Either you're moving away with panic, fear, anxiety, or moving towards with that rage, anger, and frustration. And not only, again, are you feeling those things, but physically, there's a lot happening. Your back part of your brain, your fear-based center amygdala, is now online. So making those good decisions is no longer there. Your heart rate is going to go up, your blood pressure is going to go up, your digestion and immune response and relational ability all go down. And when you have had too much, you move into freeze. And this is your dorsal vagal or your shutdown. And this is where burnout lives most of the time. This is shame, depression, numbness, helplessness. Your fuel storage and insulin activity is going to increase. Your endorphins will also actually increase to help with pain or to manage pain. And then we have the deactivation where we go back down the roller coaster. And this looks different for every single person. So this to me is real self-care, is understanding your nervous system. This doesn't mean that you always need to be in the green, so to speak. It means understanding what each 3 of these stages look like for you personally, and there are activities to help you understand that and what you need to move through them. Because what we resist persists, so we never want to force ourselves to be in social engagement. But I know when I'm in fight, flight, and freeze, I don't make good decisions. I was not the best leader, the best boss when I was in those moments. And the more that you do the things that keeps you in ventral vagal, the bigger that muscle gets. And then the other windows, fight, flight, and freeze, get a little bit smaller and you move out of them more quickly. So I'm going to end it there because I know that was a lot. I don't want to go over time. So yeah, we can skip past those because I basically talked about that. But when you push through, you are not making good decisions. And the more that you understand your nervous system, the better that you can understand what you need and how to be more present and attuned for everybody in your life, including your clients.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Gabrielle. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Emma Jack. I'm a physiotherapist, and there was a time probably now about 8 years ago where I was sort of at the height of my career. I had taken all the courses, got all the credentials. I had many amazing opportunities granted to me in my field, and I was the most miserable I had ever been. And it really struck me one day just going to Starbucks on the way to work. And I remember looking at the barista and thinking, oh my gosh, if only I could just be a Starbucks barista. And that's when I knew, uh-oh, maybe something's off here. I was really jealous of people living other lives and no longer wanted to live my own life the way I was doing it. And that's when I knew I needed to make a change. And maybe you've had a similar sort of moment where you're just like, not this, not like this anymore. And so that journey, though I wouldn't wish it on any of us, I think it can also be a really life-changing journey. I've learned so much about myself and my operating systems and what I need in order to show up as the best clinician possible. And I'm going to share with you some little tidbits because so much of the work I do now is with clinicians, helping them figure out for themselves what will help them thrive and stay in practice in a way that feels really good and nourishing and sustainable. So, just a few reflections for you. And I would love if you're willing to put some of your answers into the chat so we can sort of see each other's answers. But what are your warning signs? And Gabrielle so beautifully talked about potentially some things that could come up. Our bodies and our minds usually give us some signals that maybe we're trending towards burnout, or maybe we are finding ourselves at capacity. So I'd love to hear, like for you, what are some of those things? Snippy, apathetic. Yeah. Tolerance is low, inability to focus, out of breath, short of breath. Yeah, you notice like, oh my gosh, I haven't taken a full breath in a while. Um, Minor inconveniences, really, like it's like the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah, just wanting to stay still. I remember there were days I would finish at clinic and just be like, oh, I just need to stare at a wall for the next hour. Like, what just happened? Less patience with kids, partners, don't want to go to work. Just everything feels that much harder. I reach for sugar and caffeine. Amen, Amy. Done that too. Sleep goes out the window. Yeah, disconnect. That sort of, yeah, withdrawing, can't multitask. You end up putting your energy lots of different places. So I think it's so important that we get to know for ourselves what are some of the warning signs. Actually, one for me is dishes in the sink. When I'm getting close to capacity, I'm like, oh, I'll do it later, I'll do it tomorrow. Like my environment actually starts to show that maybe I'm reaching a sign of burnout. So it's really important to reflect for yourself and maybe just keep that awareness over the next couple months is like, what are some of the signs? Even asking people close to us, people who live in our homes, our partners, our friends, maybe they actually have some insight too when they realize things are starting to go off the rails. Maybe capacity is diminished a little bit. And also now reflecting, what's draining your energy, whether it is places or environments that you just find draining. That could be relationships. Okay, we don't need to tell them. You don't have to share in the chat publicly. But thinking about, are there certain relationships that are just feeling maybe a little bit heavy right now or taking a lot of capacity? And that's no judgment on the relationship. Whether it's caring for an elderly parent, that can be a ton of energy. Kids, somebody mentioned being short with your kids, that is a ton of your energy. And so just getting a sense of what are the things that are taking a lot of my capacity right now, because I think sometimes we also don't hold how much we're actually doing, right? We don't realize all the different places where our energy is going. And once we really get a sense of like, oh yeah, I'm caring for the kids. I have parents that also need my support. I'm treating my clients all day long. Like, yeah, maybe it makes sense that I'm feeling a little depleted, right? So, really thinking, what are the things that are draining your energy? And on the other side, what are the things that really light you up? To me, this was the most important question I posed to myself because I was sort of on this trajectory where all of my energy was going into my career. All of my energy was going into my clients, into my education, into all of these other things. And actually, what really lit me up was going rollerblading. What really lit me up was being around friends. And so, once you know what gives you energy, that is such critical information because typically they're also the things that we put last on the list. So, making a list for yourself, and I'd love for you to share in the chat, like, what are the things that give you energy? What are the things that make you feel alive again? Just reflect for yourself for a second. Being on land, yeah. Being in the sun. Yeah, I love putting like just bare feet in the grass. Getting outside, walking dogs, nature. Yeah. Making art. Oh, I love that, Whitney. Being on my horse, out in nature, meeting with friends, playing my banjo. Amazing. Yeah, we all have our own things that are just inherently, yes, they take energy to do. Going in and walking your dog takes energy, but I have never once worked with a client who was like, I feel so energized spending a day on the couch watching Netflix. Like that, typically we see that as rest, but it's actually not energy giving. There are so many things that give us energy. We complete them and we just feel like more ourselves, more alive and in this world. And so I think it's so important that we are aware of that. And the goal isn't to fake energy, isn't to pretend we have energy. It's really to get a better sense of knowing where we're at so that we can react and respond. If we know our warning signs are like on full alert, what do we need to do to bring that back? So that brings me to an energy menu. Has anybody heard of an energy menu? I have an energy menu on my fridge. It's also on my phone because at those times where I am feeling the most depleted, the last thing I'm going to think about doing is going for a walk or calling my best friend, right? Self-care menu, love that. Yeah. So really having this list that's easily accessible. This can be on a post-it note on your computer. This can be, I have mine on my fridge. I have one on my phone, but just a list of all the things that help replenish us, right? That help restore our energy because we do spend so much time giving our energy into our clients and being of service, not only for our clients, but our family and friends around us. And so it can be so important to think about, like, yes, we have our work days, they're very full, but what are the things we can do when we get home from work, right? Sitting scrolling on our phone for an hour, probably not the most energy giving thing we can do. And when we know ourselves well enough, we can really, help ourselves move through that depletion post work. So important to get these in your schedule, to make them a priority, because so often it's not that we don't have the time, it's that we're not putting our energy where it needs to be. Okay. So yeah, where can you fit these in? Where can you create some accountability? Where can you tell your colleagues, hey, I'm going to go for a walk every day at lunch, and help them keep you accountable, because it's always these things, as much as they bring us energy, sometimes feel easier said than done. Okay. The other thing that I find so important in terms of just maintaining our energy is boundaries. Okay. Boundaries, as well as I didn't want to take up too much time here, but I'll also say asking for what we need. Okay. We tend to be people who are such service to other people, who tend to be so giving of our energy. And we're not always as good at asking for what we need and getting that energy given back to us. Right. So building boundaries and or asking for what we need is a really important practice, right? It's about sharing with people what you are willing to accept and how you are going to behave in response to them. And I really do find not holding and maintaining boundaries can be one of the biggest reasons we don't feel we have energy, right? Because it just we end up doling out all of our energy all day long, and we're not feeling like we're getting back what we need. So it's so important, if you think about some of those things that are draining your energy right now, and look at, again, whether it's an environment, whether it's a relationship, are there boundaries that need to be put in place? Are there things that you need to protect your energy just a little bit more in order to ensure that you're not feeling depleted at the end of the day? So it's so important to know what your limit is, to share the plan with somebody, to say, hey, if this, then I will, right? It's not about controlling other people. It's about controlling your own behavior and response. And then the most important part about boundaries, which I still find myself struggling with here and there, is actually following through on them, is saying the boundary, but then actually enforcing the boundary. So definitely I see it as a practice, as something, that's forever a work in progress. But for myself and for my clients, I've just seen so many times how when we get into the practice of creating boundaries, get in the practice of joyfully asking for what we need, it really, really does help to maintain and protect our energy. All right, I'll pass it over to Ildi. Ildi, you're on mute.
I too wished, Emma, that I could have a job where I worked in a bakery and I could bake bread and sell bread, and that would be my life because I could make the bread, seed the bread, sell the bread, because I thought that was my Starbucks moment. Thanks, Emma. We can go to the next one. Hi, everyone. I'm Ildi. I have worked as a business consultant and business coach to clinics for 24 years. I'm also a former clinic owner with 22 team members, and I exited that business successfully in 2019. And I want to ask if you would be brave enough to write in the chat the answer to this question. Right now, what's your biggest worry about your business? Right now, what's your biggest worry? We don't need proof, just what feels really worrisome or heavy right now for you? Okay, I see sustainability, money, and the economy, not busy enough. You want to retire, that it's not going to make it. Biggest worry about my business, I won't be able to make sustainable income, not giving it attention compared to my other work. That's such a good one because you all have like 18 jobs, 18 roles, not including your personal life, not giving it enough attention compared, yeah, sustainability, lack of energy. These are all so incredibly normal, and thank you for sharing them. Um, I wanted to share some practical strategies for what I see in my work with in clinics every single day, with literally thousands of people like you and I. And I think that people like Gabrielle and Emma and Jen do such an amazing job talking about so many of the aspects: emotional, physical, routine, everything that they mentioned is so critical. And I find that, you know, when people talk about their businesses, there's such an enormous financial pressure. So I'm going to talk about the financial part. I'm going to talk about what a few things you can do that are proven again over and over with my clients, that are zero cost strategies to increase your revenue, whether that's recurring revenue or just a bit more. What's working around being smarter in our work. And um, it does always say work smarter, not harder, but I'm actually going to show you what that looks like. We call it leverage. And then, the pressure to keep this business afloat and sustain it is huge on you. And it's an enormous part of your mental load And it directly impacts the very strategies we just talked about, that we don't feel entitled, permission, or literally we know we should be doing these things, but we don't feel permission. And we can't get a break from it in our mind or physically. Thanks, Emma. So this quote here, around clinic owners feeling like you are like the gears are going so fast. You are spinning all the plates and the bank account isn't shifting. So even if you have a good revenue month or week, you're not sure about the next week or the next month, and the bank account keeps shrinking because it is more expensive than ever to run a business. And you don't feel like taking on a new skill set with, marketing per se. So I want to give you some strategies that you can literally do this week. Next slide. All right. So a lot of people say, I need more clients. I need new clients. Where are my clients? And I have these 4 bullet points to share that really the fastest, I'm going to guarantee it, Jen, on a live call. Your biggest source of revenue is the clients and patients you already have. Period. If I look at thousands of financial statements, bank accounts, so anything that you're willing to show me, 80% or more of your revenue this year will come from the people who already know you, or people they directly know, but people who already know you. 20% will come from people we don't yet know who haven't met us yet. What does that mean for you energetically? It means that 80% of our effort as a clinic owner or practitioner needs to go to the people who are our existing patients and clients, and 20% of our energy and budget or less goes to scrambling to send the message to the entire world that we can help them. So often our dormant clients, ones we haven't heard from in a while, like where's Sheila, where's Dave, they are the low-hanging fruit that you can get more immediately if you needed more revenue now. I understand money is not the be all end all. I also know that having money I see money as a tool. So it gives you some space. They give you some relief. Ironically, many clinic owners who meet the revenue targets they have end up a bit dissatisfied. And that would be an interesting topic to talk about, Jen, is I'll be happy and everything will be good when we get to X financial goal. If anybody's interested in talking about what actually happens when you get to that goal, I'll tell you it's not burnout free. And so we want to talk about reactivating our dormant clients. So it's sort of like a we want you back campaign or we miss you. And you can start with thinking about 10 clients you haven't seen in the last 6 months and do some kind of personalized check-in that feels right for you. And it is a myth. It's a story that you've made in your head that you're bothering them. They came to see you as a practitioner. There's appropriate ways you can call them, text them, email them, and literally a line or two around checking in. Okay, thanks, Emma. Social media. Everyone is pouring so much energy into this thing. And I like to explain it that social media talks to the world and email talks to your clients. So your clients, how do you talk to them? Again, literally on the phone if you're old school like me, texting, and then emails. They're so effective. You resist it because it feels spammy. Well, you're not spam. This is a person and you have their information. And I really want you to explore what feels right for you in terms of reaching out to a person to say, we're still here. And I will say in 2025, especially, what could you write in what kind of tone or words so we make it socially acceptable that maybe I was your client, but I'm so embarrassed. I haven't been back in like 7 or 8 months. I know I was supposed to come back in 2 weeks to see you for my next treatment, but I didn't. So words like, hey, I know you got busy. It's okay. You may have forgotten about us. We didn't forget about you. We want you back. We miss you. A health check-in, literally a subject line, how's it going, is completely fine. Next one. This I share, friends, because I've had the privilege of looking at thousands of schedules, clinic schedules, how you organize your time around servicing patients and this job you do of running this entire business, never mind your life. And if anybody would like this, Jen, you'll let us know like how they can get it. But if anybody wants I don't know, Jen, are we allowed to say take a screenshot? um,
We're going to send out this as a digital resource and the recording to everybody here tonight.
awesome.
So they'll get this.
So in everyone's calendar, friends, if you could peek into these businesses, they're doing strategies, routines, and habits. And these are the 4 that move the needle for most people to feel some relief. That in our day, we're spending our time and energy. I love how, of course, Emma put it around shallow work, deep work, flex time, and end of day. You can see what each of them are, but unfortunately, 95% of our tasks are shallow work and they're not going away, and the to-do list won't disappear. We want to make some time for what we call deep work. I don't recommend that it be anything less than 25 minutes, and it's 25 minutes of practice time, as Emma encouraged us to do, practice showing up in deep work. That is work on whether it's for this week or month or year, asking yourself, what one task can I do that puts me closer to what I actually want? So if you to call or email those 10 patients or clients, you have to actually look them up. And to look them up, oh my gosh, you've got to remember the mental load of your password, which that could be 6 things and create a big sweat for you. Then that's what you boundary your time to do. Flex time is a really awesome, awesome feature. I have it in my calendar 3 times a week, and it's literally for unwanted and unexpected work. That's doing my bank transfers. That is checking in with my team about something. It is something that a client asked me to review. It's space that you hold, and it can be 15 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, even if it's a couple of times a week. I suggest when you're starting, you try and do it a couple of times a day for unwanted, unexpected work. An end of day is a really simple strategy, and that is to take in your Google or Outlook calendar, a 15-minute actual appointment that says end of day. Mine's at 4:30 every day. I get to move it like any appointment because Emma and I might decide to meet up and we're going to talk at 6 o'clock. But it's a commitment to myself of a visual to say, hey, Odie, take a break or stop here. The biggest question I get, next slide, Emma, is the biggest question I get around end of day is, does that mean I can't work like after dinner and respond to a patient inquiry? Of course you can. You can do whatever you like. But even if you increase your end of day boundary by 2 times a week and you grow that capacity, it's a tangible way that works to be kind to yourself. So what I want to also encourage you to do is for those of you who have team members, even if it's a VA 1 hour a week, we want to leverage the people we work with. And a really simple strategy when you say, I'm not sure I'll be able to make enough money, here you are investing the money in this team. I use the word sell, you might use the word serve or educate. But I find this aspect of the question of the week. Is there a question that your team can ask this week of every client? I don't mean literally, but almost literally. Like if someone's running to pick up their child or doggy from doggy daycare, let them go. But is there a question that they could ask around something happening in your clinic that they may not know about? And I will tell you that your clients and patients love you, but they only know about 1/4 to 1/3 of the services that you provide. So you don't actually have a how do I get more business from new people issue. It's internal. And getting our team on board is a really simple way that you can implement. You can go ahead. I think we're at the end. So we talked about this to say, if you increase the frequency of asking people questions, you will increase the likelihood of people saying, I didn't know you did that. How did I not know? I've been coming here for 2 years. The other no, so that's a no cost. The other no cost that is super, super underestimated is having people in your business, I don't care how long they've worked there, job shadow you. And that should actually say in a consultation, not in a treatment. So you want organic, somebody to talk about more what you do there or to shift their energy, maybe to reignite them or re-engage them in their work. Have them observe you and your practitioners, and we would switch. I would watch Gabrielle, she would watch Emma, and vice versa to actually see a consult. That person will leave that room and know and have a totally shifted energy for free of what you do there and how. Awesome. This is the summary. None of those things cost money. I didn't say marketing. I did say email, which I know is scary. There's so many awesome resources that you can connect with.
This was great. Thank you so much to all our expert speakers. I'm jotting down so many notes because now I have all the questions. But I think, Ildi, one of my biggest takeaways with your presentation is just for any of our attendees that are already on Jane, they can plug into the return visit reminder feature now, like that's a report that you can pull now to be able to drive reactivations in your practice. And to your point, marketing is scary for 99% of the providers that we work with. Nobody wants to be spending tens of thousands of dollars a year in marketing for patients that may not be aligned with your services or your mission in your practice. So really
Okay.
digging into your existing practice members, one from the reactivation side, but also in the supplemental treatment or service or product side too. Like you have more than just one thing that you do. So that was my biggest takeaway. Ilde, did you want to add anything?
I did to help overcome the whole, first of all, Jane feature. Yes, put that feature on. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And think about who you feel comfortable reaching out to. And I just want to tap into the fact that we're all consumers, we're all clients and patients. Don't you sometimes find yourself thinking to this is to help you overcome the resistance of the scary marketing? Sometimes I bought something or I used a service and I actually wish they would check up to see how I'm doing. And they haven't.
Yeah.
And here we are, stressed to go. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to be a burden. But the things you summarized about reactivating patients and your existing patients, including getting referrals,
Yeah.
that's a form of marketing, but it is mostly free. Um, you have a lot of raving fans who will absolutely want to do good in the world by sharing what it is you do. We just need to speak up.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that we did in our practice, well, we had Jane's feature for, the birthday reminders, which was really
Mhm.
great. But we had integrated that with our, email send out software. So we would send out happy birthdays, and it may be somebody that we hadn't seen in a year. And it's just that little nudge of, hey, we love you. We're thinking about you on your special day. It doesn't have to be spammy. And I think to your point, a lot of the times people just need a little bit of nudge and the reminder that we're still there and we're still caring for them. So thank you for sharing that. Emma, I had a question for you before we go into our Q&A, but thank you again for your presentation. I think the one question that I had was, we work with a lot of clinicians and healthcare providers that don't know how to ask for what they need. So do you have any tips or even just your own experience of, how did you identify what you need and then how were you able to communicate that need or delegate a task or whatever?
Totally. And I think you hit the nail on the head. The first thing that we need to sort of reflect on and ideate on is knowing what we need.
Yeah.
And I think some of
Mm.
that comes from looking at what's really taking a lot of our energy right now. And sometimes when we're all just generally day to day, our lives are really full. And so it does, like, I think the first step is taking that step back and saying, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes to reflect on what's happening here
Mm.
and the supports I have around me. Who are the people that could help me? and what is it I could ask them to do? And for me, it started with really low hanging fruit. Like my husband would ask me almost daily, still does, is there anything I can do to help with dinner? And almost reflexively, I would say, no, it's fine. I've got it. Right. And once I realized, like, no, that's an opportunity for me to practice asking for help, I would be like, sure, you can wash that red pepper. So like really low hanging fruit, but it gave me sort of what I needed to feel comfortable and safe, starting to flex it that way so that when I had a bigger ask, I sort of knew what I was doing and felt comfortable doing it. So I think it starts with reflecting on what's draining me, what supports could I use? Who is the person I could use that from? And I do think it's kind of interesting because tend to get, I know I do, get so much energy from being of service. And once I thought about by me not asking for help, I'm actually taking that opportunity away from somebody else. It feels so good to help. And by not asking for help, we are eliminating that energy for that other person. So never a burden.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for reviewing that. And I think if we bring it back to running your practice and being aware of your team members' strengths and really highlighting those strengths in task management or, delegating, um, you'll often see your practice start to soar because those people are in their zone of genius. Now you've identified what really lights them up. So not only have you offloaded something that may be weighing you down or it's taking some of your energy, but now you've just like put the the speed rocket up to the sky.
It
Um,
allows people to grow within your clinic rather than feeling like they've stagnated or they're not able to grow and looking for work somewhere else, looking for a different role. If we can grow and upskill people within our practices, they're more likely to feel fulfilled and stay.
exactly. Engaged team members. That's what we're all about. Okay, great. So I'm going to move on to our collaborative chat. We have about 20 minutes here, and I'm going to go through some questions and some prompts. So if anyone feels comfortable unmuting themselves and turning their camera on, we'd love to see your face. If not, feel free to add your comments in the chat. But the first theme that I have here is all about recognizing and naming burnout. So we've talked about that a little bit, on the side here. But the question is, how do you know that you're burning out or that a colleague might be? What are the early signs you've learned to start to pay attention to? Anyone that wants to add in the chat feature?
I'll say, like, I think the behavioral things can be kind of the easiest ones to notice. Like, one that I always think of is like if you work with a team and somebody is typically punctual and now they're always late, like that could be a red flag that something is going on. I know for myself, I put this in the chat earlier, but the apathy was a really big one for me personally, which is very dangerous as a therapist. If I'm seeing clients and I'm like, I don't care what you have to tell me right now, and I can't believe I have to sit here for 47 more minutes and listen to this. Like, that was huge red flag that something needed to change. But I'm
Yeah.
sharing that because I know that there are other people who might be feeling that way too, and it's just an indicator to check in with yourself and see what needs to change.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that. We have Veronica sharing about self-doubt, which I think is not something that initially comes to mind for me, but it's true as we're in this decision fatigue and we're unable to connect the dots on like what that path forward looks like because we're just so stuck in the day to day. So thank you for that. Unable to make decisions, taking a long time to respond to messages. That's a big one. So procrastination. Um, yeah, and then irritability and overwhelm. I know when I was in practice as a registered nutritionist and I was super pregnant, and I had to stop seeing patients in my last trimester because I recognized that I no longer cared about the outcomes. And that's such a hard thing to sit back and recognize I'm not my best self right now to be able to provide patient care. So I went on mat leave early as far as seeing patients. I still worked in the practice. Um, so yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for sharing. Hard to focus. Is it burnout or is it perimenopause? Hormone, hormone regulation may be another chat that we do. Okay, let's move on. I'd love to ask our panel here about what role does stigma play in underreporting burnout in healthcare?
I do feel like it's getting better, like it just in rooms like this, right? And having conversations and, you know, to an extent, not that we want to normalize it, but the more people open up and share vulnerably how they're feeling, I think it does make it okay, right? It's sort of this trickle down effect as soon as one person says, "Hey, I'm feeling this way, anyone else?" And in that way, I think I have felt like the conversation, especially over the past 10 years, has really shifted, not only around burnout, but just mental health in general. And I think there is more awareness. Do I think we can continue to do better? Absolutely. Do I think we can continue to foster environments and create cultures that don't lead to it? Absolutely. But I do think it has shifted, and I think it's because of conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Agreed.
sharing on my social media today that if I'm being totally truthful, 10 years ago, I would not have been able to talk about burnout because I would have seen it as a sign of weakness.
Mm.
I would have seen it as a failure. I would have seen it as a betrayal of the programming in my mind by my very, very nurturing, loving parents. However, in our family, that was not encouraged or rewarded. What was rewarded and encouraged is suck it up. In fact, we got extra badges for suffering because, my people came from all kinds of suffering and hardship. So that's what was admired. Overcoming was admired. And I didn't realize I'm taking on these behaviors. If I had to say one good thing that came from that is, well, Emma mentioned about the importance of naming these things, is able to see it in the healthcare providers that I'm supporting and being able to ask questions. Like we would not have that part of the discussion, Emma, like you said years ago. Now we're having entire forums. What I sometimes think, how can we help like downstream is not even as much asking for help. That's in such an enormous task, but more recognizing the mental load, not only as a human, but as a business owner and a clinic owner as a helper.
Yeah.
That is that I think we still need some work on. But
Mm-hmm.
it's, as Emma said, it's here. And I think you're doing the one thing that was like the best burnout advice that I got too late in my business and career, which is don't isolate. So it's so great, Jen, that you've put this together and that the people are here.
Yeah. We're having the important discussions. And I think for sure, to Emma's point, we wouldn't be where we are today without continuously looking to hold each other up. And I love that personal story, Ildi, because I think a lot of us go through life powering through. I'm just going to get through this to get to the next stage. And I just need to make this more money, or I need to see this many more patients. And then everything will be okay. And then I'll be able to relax. But the truth of the matter is life doesn't stop for us. Our children grow up, our parents age, our practices will continue to grow, in the way that we nurture it. But it's also about living for today and living for ourselves. And those initial moments of recognition to burnout are so important that we continue to recognize the subtle signs before it gets so bad that you are digging yourself out of a hole. So thank you for that. And Gabrielle said, yes, our upbringing, values, ideals, and our own mental health are all woven into how we run our business. Absolutely. Absolutely true. I'm gonna go off to another question for our attendees and participants today. So this one is about managing your energy. So what's one thing that helps you reset during your day? Something like a breathing exercise or music or going on a walk. Whatever it is, drop it in the chat and we'd love to chat about it. For me, it's music. I find music has the ability to completely shift my mindset in a day. If I wake up and it's rainy and the kids are complaining for 12 snacks before 9 a.m., and I'm just like, oh my God, this is going to be a day. How am I going to get through this day? I turn on some music and it completely shifts the wiring in my brain. Like, we're going to have a good day. I'm grateful for today. We're going to get through the day. Um,
Jen,
let's
I literally have playlists on Spotify for everything. I have a commuting playlist, I have a charting playlist, I have a financial playlist, I have a clinic, like during the workday playlist. I think music is such a form of energy and totally agree. If music resonates for you, like that's something I would highly encourage you curate for yourself in different environments when you know you're going to need energy because I love that.
mhm. 5 minute reset, hugs. Oh, I love that. We could have a whole discussion on how hugs change our mindset. Chats with coworkers, patients, always cheering me up, re-energizing. Absolutely. Fists of anger meditation to release and move energy. Always feel more energized after just 3 minutes. That's great. Polyvagal playlist, aka a playlist that makes you feel good, joy, happy. It's something about specific music in like the right key. Should probably do a little research into this. We'll have to talk to a therapist about it. But somebody always is geared towards like a specific key. You know what I mean? And you hear that and you're like, oh, I feel at home. Anyways, we'll move on. Oh, singing too. Yeah, that's awesome. Sitting quietly. Yes. Food. That's another thing. Nourish our bodies so our brains work. Okay, really neat. Thank you for that. Okay. I would love to move on to the difference between self-care and nervous system regulation and why it matters. I think this is something that we can explore just a little bit further, especially with Gabrielle having such a focus in nervous system regulation and how we're not going to go for a massage and it's not going to cure all of our problems. So maybe Gabrielle, if you wanted to jump in for this one. So what's the difference between self-care and nervous system regulation and why does it matter?
Well, I think self-care is important, but it has become kind of this buzzword, and I feel like it's gotten really watered down where it's kind of like what I was saying, take a bubble bath, get a massage, light a nice candle. And those things are really good, and I love a good massage. But as I mentioned, right, like that doesn't solve everything that's happening around me. And there are so many things that are out of our control, especially with burnout. I do think it's a systemic issue, but I still have to get up every morning and live my life and deal with it. So to me, they are intertwined, but nervous system regulation is really about understanding each of those three phases I was talking about earlier and what you need in each phase. Because when you do that, you will be able to move through it more quickly. You're able to move through it more quickly. You have more psychological flexibility. So you're not stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze space where you're snippy and irritable and like shutting down and dissociating. You're recognizing it, you're feeling it. And when you do that, you move through it more quickly. And then your body understands, like, okay, this is okay. I am stressed. It's okay to be stressed. What do I need in this moment? Like Emma was talking about, like asking for what you need. That's how you can begin to understand that. As a neurodivergent person, We don't have great interoception, so sometimes by the time I'm pissed off and like angry, my body's been trying to tell me that for a long time. And so I have really done a lot of work on trying to slow down and pay attention to the signals that our bodies are giving us. So, like for example, and this is very privileged, but I don't work before like 10 a.m. because I really need a slow morning. And I know that about myself. I know if I have a meeting at 8 a.m., I'm rushed and it ruins my whole day. So I'm very intentional about those types of things to ask for what I need and to help support myself. Same thing with delegating. I know that if I have to go in Canva and do something, it's going to take me like 3 hours and I'm going to move one thing and it won't go where I need it to go and I'll get pissed off. And that's why I have a VA and I ask her to do that for me because I'm really good at the content and being a visionary, but I don't want to be the one to go in and actually do it. And I can have somebody do that for me. So,
Yeah, that's great. And I think just one of the key takeaways that I had from your comment is setting your day up for success. So for you, like your day starts at 10 a.m. and that's how you're going to be the most productive in your day. And that's not everybody's reality, but then recognizing what does your day look like and how can you set up systems in your personal and professional life so that you don't get overwhelmed. So the packing the lunches, getting the kids out the door, driving to school, like all those things that stress us out in the morning and then we get to the office and we're like dead. We've got nothing left just from like the 7 to 9. So what are the things that we can do to protect
Mm.
our energy before the rush? Because chaos exists. Um, so I think that's a great comment for sure. I have one last prompt for our attendees here, and this is about setting boundaries. So when have you successfully set a boundary that protected your energy or your time, and what do you think made that work for you? We'll give people a minute to start typing.
I can just share that for myself, something that, similar to what Gabrielle was saying, something I realized for myself was I was not somebody who showed up the same way working in the evenings as I did when I was working sort of, 10 till 5. And it felt hard at the time to set that boundary that I wasn't going to work past 5 and really explaining my reasoning why. Not that you need to over explain a boundary, you do not need to explain. But I found once I just said, you know what, it's really important to me that I'm home with my family, that I make a good dinner, that I sit down to eat. Everyone was so understanding and they were like, of course, I want that for myself too. So I think we can often feel like we are going to be upsetting people, and we don't have control over how people respond to our own needs. But I found time and time again, it's almost permission giving. When we hold a boundary for ourselves, it allows that person to think about, ooh, what matters to me.
Hmm. That's great. And we have so many great comments just about setting boundaries and accessibility. I think that's the biggest takeaway. The texting, the emails, yeah, with your clients and your team. So sorry, I'm just reading through all these. There's so many good ones. Hiring a VA, turning phone off after hours, separate professional and personal life. Yeah, absolutely. Protecting your space is so important. We're more than just providers and consultants, right? Okay, I would love to finish off with just highlighting some of our awesome Jane features. And I'm going to ask our expert panel here for their favorite burnout prevention Jane feature, but mine has to be just the scheduling flexibility. So if you're a solo provider or you're growing to multidisciplinary practice, just the ability to manage your schedule and all the providers that you have in your practice. Jane just makes it so easy from scheduling to automation for your intake forms. And so that would definitely be my takeaway. I'll let our panel here add their comment.
For me, it's definitely online booking. I actually got rid of my phone and really made it, clients serve themselves. So whether they're booking, modifying, canceling their appointments, making it really self-service, because oftentimes people were wanting to do that after 5 p.m., right when they had time to book appointments. And so the ability for people to do that on their own, where I, don't necessarily have to be involved. They see my schedule, they can compare it to theirs. That just makes it so much easier.
Accessibility for sure. Anybody want to add their favorite Jane feature in the chat as well? Gabrielle.
Somebody said breaks, which is a good one. Mine is always the template library, because I do consulting with a lot of therapists who take insurance here in the US or Medicare and Medicaid, and they want us to chart very specifically. And so I love that everything you could need is already in there, and it's just there. You don't have to recreate it yourself. You just click the one you want and you just use it instead of having to try and waste a ton of time to put something together yourself. It's already been done for you.
Yeah, that's a great one. Ildi, did you want to add your
My favorite Jane feature is reports. You need to know where you stand, and there can just be so much reassurance, because I think you're doing all so much better than you think, and
Yeah,
you can't build on success you don't acknowledge.
absolutely. Or optimize what you don't know. Yeah. Okay, great. Does anybody in our chat have any questions for our expert panel here before we log off? The year recap and review. Yeah, great feature. Does Jane have automated birthday emails? No, so there's an integration with MailChimp that we use to send out our emails. Does anybody on the panel use that feature with Jane? Yeah.
Many of my clients do. And if I could say, if you're really interested in that feature, focus on milestone birthdays. What's a milestone birthday? 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 75, because people are paying even more attention to themselves. But it's worth segmenting the list. So ask Jane to produce a list of patients who were born in 1970, who will be 55 on August 7th. And it's you'll find yourself showing up in a different energy. Allow
Yeah.
yourself to do it. It's really worth it. You're gonna see a result.
To our expert speakers, Emma, Ildi, and Gabrielle, thank you so much for sharing not just your knowledge, but your stories and your humanity. Your words were truly a gift today. To all of you that showed up live or are watching the replay, thank you for being here. These conversations matter because of your presence and your participation. A few quick reminders before we log off for today. You will receive the replay and follow-up resource guide by email. If you found today helpful, please share it with your team or your colleagues and mark your calendars for our next virtual meetup where we will continue this conversation around clinical sustainability and team wellness on May 20th with Dr. Jordan Robertson. Until then, take care of yourselves, support each other, and remember, burnout isn't a personal failure, it's a signal that change is needed. You are not alone, and there are tools and community to support you. Thank you so much for being a part of this today.